Hello again, here are my hands, and once again, this is the Zoom L6max. A recurring request anytime I've shown the L6max has been to look at its bounce recording / overdubbing feature. So that's what we're doing today, as it works a bit differently than many of you might expect. Recording on the original L6 is dead simple, no real options, just press record and capture what's going through the mixer so you have it for later to never listen to again, of course. Personally, that's how I prefer it. Simple, uncomplicated, but it also means no real overdubbing. The L6max takes this simple recording workflow and introduces the idea of bouncing tracks. This is important, as bounce recording is basically how you overdub on this device. You can't just press record and overdub directly onto individual mixer channels like you may expect from punch-in recording in a DAW, for example. Every overdub requires collapsing what you've already recorded down to the master track first. When you press record on the L6max, it records all 8 channels at once, as well as the master. You can't simply arm or disarm individual channels. For example, you can't specify just channel 2 for recording. Pressing record always means all 8 channels. Of course, there is a master-only recording mode, which does not do multi-track recording, but that's not what we're talking about today. I'm assuming you have multi-track recording selected like we do now. So pressing record results in 9 audio files being created within the corresponding project folder of your card. One for each of the 8 channels, even if that channel was empty, like these 7 are, and another for the stereo master track. For demonstration purposes, I've loaded a project that has pre-recorded audio on each channel already. Pressing play allows you to hear and adjust each of those individual channels, like so. But if I hit record now, because these channels already have recorded files assigned to them, the L6max will bump me to a new project and record there instead, which can be confusing at first. And it's how I accidentally filled my card with a bunch of new empty projects. So I'll press play to hear what we just did. The L6max will bump me to a new project and record there instead. So there you go. As I was explaining that, I pressed record on that other project. It kicked me to a new one and recorded my vocal through the mic here. To stay on the same project and keep recording over existing audio, you first have to bounce the old audio to the stereo master track. This then frees up the mixer channels to record new audio while playing back what was previously recorded via that bounce master file. In practical terms, look at it like a trade-off, as bounce commits everything you've recorded so far into a single stereo file over here, and in exchange gives you back 8 empty channels again to record onto. So to do that, we simply press bounce and then select either quick bounce or real-time bounce. We'll cover those options in a bit, but quick bounce is likely what you'll use the most as it's a bit faster. So we'll press that. I've sped that up a bit in the edit because it's not actually that much faster than real time, which we'll see later, but for now it does the job. So once bounced, all the 8 channels now are free for new audio, and we can still hear what was previously recorded via that master recording. And now if we press record, we'll still hear that prior audio by way of the bounced master we just created, but channels 1 through 8 are now free to receive new audio, like this microphone that's plugged into channel 1, which used to be the bass track in that instrumental. So let's try it. Testing, testing. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing for you. This is just to prove I'm recording my voice. Now that it's done processing, we'll play it back. Testing, testing. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing for you. This is just to prove I'm recording my voice. And there you go. Obviously, I didn't take too much care into the levels or the mixing of that, but it proves that we've now bounced those 8 tracks over and freed up room in these tracks to record. Now, of course, doing that recording of this single track, I can't just arm track one. So we recorded all 8 tracks again. That's just the way it works on the L6 Max. And you can undo the last bounce, only the most recent one, by the way, by pressing the undo button here. But this is where you need to be careful, as undoing a bounce means you are reverting to the previous individual channel recordings too. Think of undoing a bounce like reneging on that trade you made earlier, meaning you're giving up that bounce stereo file and you also lose the free channels that you were given in that trade, as undo redistributes the previous recordings all out again to their individual channels. This means any new recording, like the vocal we just did, will be deleted in favor of that bass coming back. Let's try it. Undo, execute, bounce, undo, complete. And now when I play, you saw that that level now controlled the level of the bass as I cranked it for a second there. So that means that audio recording of vocals that we did is gone. In fact, in this particular instance, when you undo a bounce and it spreads those channels back with their individual audio stems, that audio file gets deleted. So it's gone from the card as well. And as far as I can tell, there's no redo option either. You can rebounce, so I could take these 8 instrumental tracks and bounce them back, but that doesn't bring back that vocal test we did. So you just have to be careful when you're using things like the undo. In practical terms, you can think of bouncing as a kind of safety net for your original recordings, as once bounced, those initial recordings are tucked away safely as stem files in the project folder on your SD card, and you're only actually listening back to that bounced master file. Any new recordings are then susceptible to being overwritten either via re-recording or undoing the last bounce until they too are bounced and tucked away next to the other channel recordings. That's to say, each time you bounce, the individual channel recordings get saved on the card along with a new enumerated version of the bounced master. So you could record all 8 channels like we started with, bounce them down, then record completely different instruments on the 8 channels again while playing back the bounced master. Then if you looked at the resulting audio files on your card, you'd see 2 sets of 8 individual channel recordings, which can be handy for mixing later in the DAW, for example. Just be aware that their file names will be very similar, and I don't see a way to change that on the device. Also, according to the manual, you can bounce a project up to 99 times. So that means your project folder could have up to 792 individual channel files and 99 master files by the end. Just make sure you have a large enough SD card and are prepared to sift through a lot of similarly named files to make use of that many bounces. Worth mentioning as well that bouncing sort of makes punch-in recording possible, just not in the way you may expect. So I've rebounced our test project here, and after you've bounced a project, you can use the forward and back buttons to fast forward or rewind to a specific point in your project and start recording a new audio file from there. This allows you to drop in and record a solo, for example. So let's try it. I'll press fast forward here and move to about halfway through the project. There we go, 15 seconds in. And now when I press record, I can do a vocal straight at that point on the project. Here we go. I'm in the middle of the project now. Yay. And then that processes. We'll rewind a bit and play. Here we go. I'm in the middle of the project now. Yay. And again, not very well mixed, but you see the example. So you don't have to record the entire length of the project each time. And I did check. What will happen with that punch in recording is it will append the appropriate amount of silence onto the beginning of the file so you can line them all up in your DAW of choice. It just won't have any info after that's done, but that won't matter for setting it up in the right queue, for instance. Another small quirk worth mentioning in this workflow is there's an option to exit bounce mode once you've done a bounce, but I'm not quite sure why, as exit bounce mode just kicks you out to another new project and moves you there. They really want you to create new projects on this thing, and it can be kind of confusing to realize, oh, I'm not on the same project anymore. There must be some reason with the way the bouncing architecture works, but just keep in mind that's the second method that I've shown that's ended up with new projects that I didn't expect necessarily. Now, about the distinction between quick bounce and real-time bounce. Quick bounce is basically what the name implies. It bounces all 8 channels to a single master file slightly faster than real-time playback, and while that's happening, everything is silent and you can't do anything to the controls. Conversely, as you might have figured out already, real-time bounce processes the audio in real time, but also leaves all the controls open and audio playing, so you can basically make mix tweaks and do things like play the sample pads, etc., while bouncing in real time. As an example of that, I'll initiate a real-time bounce and then make some changes to the levels, maybe press some sound pads, and then we'll listen to the result. Potassium, potassium, potassium. And there we go. Let's hear what that sounds like. Potassium, potassium. Okay, you get the idea. I had to throw some banana jam in there for you. This seems handy in theory, but personally, I can't imagine a scenario where I'd use it when I could just take the individual stems that are already recorded into a DAW and have much more control and not have to play it back in real time, but maybe I'm missing a use case. Either way, in my testing, stopping a real-time bounce midway through did sometimes result in the project losing all audio, which required undoing the bounce to restore it. So it seems like you do have to let the real-time bounce run for at least a certain length of time before stopping it, or else it can kind of corrupt the project. But in this case, you saw we ran for about 17 seconds of the larger bounce, and it was still fine. So just keep that in mind. I did have some issues with stopping a real-time bounce midway through. All in all, it's a curious workflow that can be a bit hard to get used to, especially if you're accustomed to punch-in recording workflows of a DAW, etc. But I can see it being handy or even fun depending on the project. It strikes me as a more crafty way of stacking the existing recordings rather than the workflow and flexibility of a typical multi-track recorder. So if you're coming from a DAW style punch-in mindset, you may have to adjust your expectations and workflow a bit. A quick note on the sound pads, as you did just hear me press the potassium button, of course. Integrating the sound pads into this recording workflow is a bit trickier than I did expect, as they don't have a dedicated audio channel and are only recorded to the master. So you have to be organized with regards to when you want to add them to your project. Just keep that in mind. Sound pads only get recorded onto the master. Also, it's worth mentioning that there appears to be no MIDI control over the recording options as of yet, so you're not going to be able to do this hands-free like a looper, for example. I'm sure when Zoom eventually announces the L6max next final, we promise, they'll have some of this sorted out. Until then, hopefully this was helpful, and let me know how you'll make use of the bounce features of the L6max. There are more features to explore, of course. I have some thoughts on the AI noise reduction, for example. There's also assigning pre-recorded files to tracks and sound pads. So let me know what you'd like me to look at next. As always, thanks for watching.